Alrighty, welcome back everyone. We just talked about Michigan fighting back against the NCAA. I think there's a lot of different things to take from it. The biggest thing is the NCAA just isn't the power that we need it to be as of right now, and I think Michigan knows that, and I think they're trying to get off a little bit easier than they probably would if we had a governing body that had some teeth to it. But at the end of the day, definitely something that we'll unpack a little bit more in detail, and definitely something that we'll get more details on as the week and a couple of weeks unfold here. But let's talk about this. Let's talk about the next head coach to win their first national title, because one just did. Ryan Day just got on top of the mountaintop for the very first time in his career in his 6th year on the job in 2024, and there's definitely some things to talk about with the national title head coaches and what's the possible next head coach to possibly do it. And we'll start with kind of a pattern that has been forming around these head coaches that have won it and the recent national champions. So Ryan Day, Kirby Smart, Dabo Swinney. Those are the active head coaches that have a national title. Obviously, Dabo Swinney with the 2 in 2016, 2018, Kirby Smart in 2021, 22, and then Ryan Day this past year. And then you obviously have Jim Harbaugh in 2023 in between that, but has left the sport, obviously. But prior to those 4 head coaches, prior to the really the Kirby Smart year, and really the Dabo Swinney year, but including Dabo Swinney in this conversation, let's just say, by 2021 and back all the way to apologies, from 2000 to 2021, there were 2 head coaches that had won a national title that were beyond their first 4 years at the job, and it was Mac Brown in 2005, in 2005, and then it was Dabo Swinney in 2016, and in his 8th year. So you're in a position now where the last 3 years, or the last 4 years now, you have Kirby Smart, won it in 2021 in his 6th year on the job. In 2022, won it in his 7th year. Jim Harbaugh won it in his 9th year on the job in 2023, and then Ryan Day just won it in his 6th year. A lot of guys used to win it very, very early on. So it's something to think about as we dig into more of these head coaches, including Ryan Day is a great example where in his 4th year, in his 3rd year, he got to the national title, lost, and everyone was talking about how he can't win the big one. In his 5th year, he lost to, or his 4th year, he lost to UGA and Kirby Smart, and he was thinking, man, will I ever get through this thing? And then finally, in year 6, it fully breaks through. So it's a huge change from what we used to have where all but one coach up until 2016, from 2000 to 2016, had won their championship in the first 4 years of their tenure. Now it's everyone right after that. It's everyone 6 years and beyond that are winning their national titles, and I don't know if that's just a blip on the radar or something to watch as we move forward, but it's definitely something to think about as we get into these head coaches that can't win the big one or that haven't gotten to the mountaintop. Maybe just need a little bit more time in the NIL and transfer portal era to really do what they need to do and get to the top of the mountaintop the way they want to. But let's get into some candidates, some guys that could possibly do it, and maybe some monikers to follow with how long they've been on the job and how long they have to go to get to that 6th year or that 7th year where these guys finally broke through. And we'll talk about the guy that was just about 12 points away from winning his first one this past year, and a remarkably talented head coach, a very young head coach that has a ton of career still ahead of him. I think there's still questions when you talk about the Marshall NIU type games, where if you have a couple of those games every single year, you're probably not going to make the CFP enough times to really give yourself a great shot to compete with some of the other head coaches we can talk about here in a second. So I think there is worries with Marcus Freeman, but the reality is we saw him kind of grow up before our eyes this year. Did an incredible job getting that team ready to go right after that NIU game. Would have been very easy for that team to fold and lose to a Louisville, lose to a USC, and that season to go to an end. But they found a way to a national title, did an incredible job, and I'd bet that they win a national title while he's there. Now, how long that's going to take, that's a big time question. He's only in his 3rd year on the job, so maybe it's another 3 years before he finds his way to the mountaintop like some other coaches have. But the reality is he's done an incredible job in his first couple of years there. I really think he's going to win a national title at Notre Dame. Now, I would have said that about a number of coaches in the past 10 years that haven't found their way there. So there's a lot of different things to compare here, but the way that I see it, Marcus Freeman might be one of the very top on the list of who can possibly make it to that next level, who can possibly win that first national title next. Steve Sarkisian is the other name that I want to talk about, the other guy that Ohio State took out on their way to the national title. And Sark is the guy that it definitely is going to get the next can't win the big one tag. I have a feeling that he will be the next guy that we're talking about around the James Franklins of the world and the Ryan Days of the world, that you can't win the big one, you can't get over the hump, but very much a very capable coach. And he's done a great job building one of the best rosters, one of the best staffs in the country, and they were a play away from the national title 2 years in a row. You just got to get that one play. You just got to finally get over that hump, and it's much easier said than done. But coming out of his 4th year at Texas, so getting into that area where people are starting to win national titles nowadays, and he's definitely a guy that could absolutely win a national title as early as next year, with Arch Manning coming in with a lot of hype around that program, maybe the number 1 team in the country going into 2025, and a lot of juice, no doubt about that. So going to be awesome to see what he can do, and definitely a guy that I don't want to say for sure that he's going to win a national title, but feel very good about where Texas is heading, and it's hard for me to believe that a team that's been this close 2 years in a row is just going to miss the entirety of his time there. Dan Lanning's a name that is going to be very popular around this discussion for a very long time because what he's done at Oregon has been really, really incredible. Now, the question will be getting over that last hump, and it's going to be the question for all of these head coaches that we talk about is getting over that final game, because he was able to beat Ohio State. He was able to beat Penn State this year, and then when you get that one huge game in the Rose Bowl, you just get railroaded. And frankly, I think a lot of people were going to get railroaded by Ohio State on that day, so I'm not taking a ton away from him, and I think it's very fair to say that all of the years that he's been at Oregon, they've taken slow steps forward. You know, they gotten a little bit better last year, missed out on the Pac-12 championship, missed out on a couple of different things because of Washington. This year, we're able to break through, win the Big Ten their very first year, beat Ohio State, be the only undefeated team rolling in, and then you just run into a buzzsaw. So he's done a remarkable job. Would not be surprised at all if this was the guy we were talking about next year and saying who's going to follow up Dan Lanning and win their first national title, because he's done an incredible job there. They've only gotten better since he's been there, and I can't imagine it's going to stop anytime soon, because the foundation that he's built there has been about as good as you'll find around the country. James Franklin is the other guy you're going to want to talk about, and it's the guy you're probably watching the closest as you head into 2025, because there's a lot of different guys that very badly need this, and he could be the 3rd straight head coach to win their very first national title. All the pressure in the world is on him. There's no doubt about that. Does he have enough to get multiple wins over, let's say, Texas, Ohio State, Georgia, to win a national title? That's what he's going to have to do, one way or another. He's going to have to get over that hump of winning that huge game and then get over it again and then do it one more time to win a national title. So he's staring at 2025, probably the head coach that has maybe his best chance in 2025. Now, I don't think it's going to fall off a cliff after 2025, but there definitely is a little bit of a worry there. There's definitely a little bit of a worry that 2025 is the perfect stars-aligned moment, and if they don't hit, how long will it take to get back there? So that's something to watch. Definitely a very capable head coach and a guy that I fully expect to get at least close at some point soon, maybe even in 2025. And then you got some other candidates. You got Kalen DeBoer, a very good head coach that was very close to winning one of these national titles not too long ago. So definitely a guy that can absolutely get there. I think the question is, adapting to the SEC and how long he'll have to do that. We talked about how it takes some guys to break through at their new job to finally get to that national title level. He won't have 6 years. I can absolutely promise you that. If they go 9-3 next year, he might get 2026, but that's about all you're getting. If that's what you're going to give them every single year down there in Tuscaloosa, they're going to kick you out the door pretty quickly. Then you do have Brian Kelly, a very established head coach that is looking towards 2025, kind of the same way James Franklin is. A lot of very good veteran talent coming back, a lot of talent on the defensive side of the ball that obviously has the defensive coordinator that's going into his 2nd year. Feels like a team that could possibly make that jump, and Brian Kelly's been close in the past. Maybe he can finally break through in 2025 or beyond. And then Mario Cristobal, a guy that it just feels like that team is so close to kicking down the door. Now, this year, I would argue was a little bit disappointing in some different ways. It felt a lot like that 2023 LSU season, but the reality is he's still building. He's still getting that program in a better place than it was yesterday, and I have to assume that's going to continue, and I have to assume at some point they can possibly break through. I think they're a little bit further away than some of these other teams, but not quite too far away. And then Michigan, Sharon Moore in Michigan, can they possibly get back to the mountaintop? I think they're much further away than all of these other guys that we've talked about. I think that's fair to say. I'm definitely a little bit nervous about the future with what we just talked about in the first segment, so there's a lot of questions here. There's no doubt about that, but a very capable head coach and a guy that absolutely can win a national title if he's given enough time and enough ability to win a national title. And that'll be a fascinating thing to watch that will have as much to do with the NCAA as just about anyone else. But my pick for who's going to do this, my pick for the next guy that's going to break through and win their first national title, is Steve Sarkisian. I do think this guy has the best mix of elite talent, is in a great spot with the SEC where multiple losses will still give you a chance at the CFP and at a title where they could be an Ohio State type figure in a couple of years where maybe they lose a couple of games they're not supposed to lose, but they find their way in as an 8 seed and become a juggernaut at the end of the season. I think they're one of the teams that can possibly do that. So whenever they're in the field, they are very, very dangerous. So Sark's going into his 5th year in 2025. The new pattern has held up, it might take him one more year. A lot of guys have had to wait till their 6th year, but you do get beyond that 4th year. Maybe you have a chance to lift that trophy, and it could very well be in 2025 that he finally does break through, gets that national championship trophy for the first time in his career, but still a little bit of work to do, no doubt about that. But when I look around this program, and when I look around the country overall, I think I'm looking at what Ohio State did a year ago and what Georgia and Alabama did for so long. We're seeing a lot of those things in Austin, Texas right now, and I'll bet on Steve Sarkisian to be the next head coach to win his first national title. Could very well be any of the guys that we just talked about, and it could very well be in 2025 because I don't know how confident I feel about Ohio State replacing all those guys, about Georgia finding their way right back to the mountaintop, and Kirby, and then Clemson and Dabo Swinney is a whole lot of questions. There's no doubt about that. So it's going to be really interesting to watch, and we could be having the same conversation next year where we say who's going to follow up Steve Sarkisian, or who's going to follow up Marcus Freeman, or who's going to follow up James Franklin as the next head coach to win their first national title. It would be an awesome thing to watch, but I'll go with Steve Sarkisian as the next guy. And I think it could be a number of guys. But at the end of the day, let's take our second break here. When we come back, let's do my favorite NFL prospects. We'll do a little bit of a part 2 here. A couple of guys that I really, really like, and we'll talk about that guy we talked about yesterday, and Alfred Collins from Texas right after this, so stick with us.